There's an anime for everybody. The campers have one, the skater kids have one, hell, even the alien believers and occultists get to share one. But it wasn't until Ruri Rocks this year that I finally found a show for me. Not because I'm a geologist, but because I used to be a graduate student. I actually have a PhD in engineering and work as a scientist by day. Ruri Rocks is the rare show where I get to take off my analytical hat and just be an unadulterated fan. When I see Imari introduce the polarized light microscope, I vividly remember my own days studying the thermal decomposition of polymers using the exact same instrument. When Ruri is added as an author on one of Nagi's papers, I'm taken back to my first time seeing my name on a scientific publication. And when I see that one dude asleep on 3 chairs in the middle of the day, yeah, I recall those days too. But it's not just these fun details that have me jumping out of my seat. What I've come to adore is how Ruri Rocks values the little things. As one can expect from a cute girls doing cute things show, Ruri Rocks begins with a high schooler named Ruri Tanigawa who knows absolutely nothing about mineralogy. At first, she's driven by her desire for flashy gemstones and jewelry. But upon meeting graduate student Nagi Arato, Ruri begins to hunt for the gemstones straight from their sources, learning a ton of rock facts along the way. At the core of every episode is Ruri's pursuit of a shiny, little thing. In some episodes, she's panning for placer gold, other times she's hunched over a microscope searching for sapphires in sand. It shouldn't be exciting, but Ruri Rocks and Studio Bind make it so dazzling, illustrating breathtaking environments to make those climactic moments literally and figuratively shine. It's easy as an outsider looking in to be overly reductive and dismiss the show for its premise. Who would get excited over a geology anime? But anime has a knack for turning the most dull-seeming hobbies into entertaining spectacles through the power of moe and sakuga. And Ruri Rocks continues that tradition, finding ways to squeeze life lessons and comfort out of literally digging for trash. What I loved most about each adventure was how the show imbued so much excitement into finding a single small rock. Despite how often they seem to come across a critical mass of gemstones, these rocks aren't going to bring generational wealth to the cast. It doesn't matter because Nagi, Imari, and Seto, and later Ruri, bring so much enthusiasm and put in so much work to make the rewards feel meaningful regardless. Take episode 2, where Ruri stumbles upon an unexpected shape of pyrite. Nagi is quite surprised since you normally don't see 2 distinct shapes of minerals in a single location. In fact, she's quite hyped. The discovery would rewrite the world as we know it, she says. Ruri skeptically shrugs. That's barely anything. And this is such a graduate student moment, where I'd excitedly tell my friends and family about some exceptionally crazy finding in my field that realistically would have no impact on their lives. Ruri's right that uncovering 2 forms of pyrite in the single location won't bring her untold riches. But the real value comes from the sense of achievement. As Nagi argues her perspective, the scene changes to 2 very wide shots of the girls underneath the cliff. The cinematography dwarfs the duo as Nagi explains how this small rock, barely the size of Ruri's thumb, gives anybody the opportunity to contribute to humanity's understanding of the natural world. The visual juxtaposition between their smallness and the vast landscape drives home Nagi's point. Never belittle something for seeming small. In the same way we wouldn't trivialize another person for their potential and value, Nagi and the director warn Ruri not to be so narrow-minded. The speech resonates with Ruri, and it unlocks something in her mind. As someone who got into the hobby initially to obtain flashy jewelry, Ruri begins to evaluate these small rocks not for their appearance, but for their potential. Every episode feels like you're taking off the blinkers. Though Ruri goes off on a treasure hunt looking for gold, she always comes away with something more valuable than the rock itself. Occasionally, that unforeseen treasure comes in the form of new companions. Other times, it's a stronger connection to a deceased family member. and sometimes it even gets your name in a scientific journal. It's important to value connections that aren't in plain sight, Nagi reminds Ruri early in the season, and it's a lesson that applies just as much to her as it does to the audience. That it's not what's literally in your hand, but the grand scheme of things, the doors this rock opens, the contributions this rock will make to the rest of the world. The big things. While Ruri happily indulges in her obsession over collecting small gemstones, not everyone is patiently enabled by a passionate grad student like she is. In fact, sometimes we're pressured and dissuaded from pursuing what excites us. Enter Seto Shoko, Ruri's classmate. She's Ruri's foil in every way, quiet yet highly knowledgeable about mineralogy even at a young age. But she wasn't always like this. In fact, growing up, she used to proudly show off her pretty rocks to everyone. She used to dream of being a rock professor one day. That is, until one night when she overhears her parents wishing she would choose a more appropriate interest. Losing the support from her friends and family, Seto shelved mineralogy to conform to what everyone else expected her to do. The start of the episode succinctly tells the story of how Seto's enthusiasm for rocks was ultimately buried. The little things are not just small rocks. They are the whispers behind your back, the brutal honesty of children, the dismissive attitudes of adults. People, especially kids, are easily influenced by the seemingly innocent words of the adults they look up to, and the peers they spend time with. After losing her family's support, Seto goes from a happy-go-lucky kid to a recluse in high school. The small setbacks build upon each other, creating walls between Seto and her true desires. But when she discovers Ruri, Nagi, and Imari collecting sea glass, she gets roped into an unexpectedly fun adventure. At first, she brushes off the glass as unremarkable, echoing the people that burned her as a child. But Imari finds value in even this dull-colored glass and asks Seto, "Isn't it pretty?" And Seto, for the first time in years, agrees. She finds a kindred soul who thinks rocks are as pretty as she does. It's wonderful to see Seto's walls gradually come down, bit by bit, from Ruri's enthusiasm and Imari's knowledge. The hesitancy fades away as Seto's curiosity and passion shines through. When she shares her knowledge, Imari compliments her. When she finds the glass that she's been looking for, the others gather around her instead of running away. And when she grows bashful at the end of the day, Ruri invites her out again. Finally, Seto musters the courage to take a leap of faith over that fear of rejection she's all too used to, of people not taking her passion seriously. She confesses to Imari that she wants to be a mineralogy researcher one day, a rock professor. She admits to all the rock-related activities that she's kept pursuing in spite of her parents' wishes, showing how she still has hope in spite of all the resistance she's received. And Imari does not fail Seto in the same way everyone else did. She tells Seto that not only is studying mineralogy fun, but also that Seto should pursue what makes her happy, that she'll find like-minded people like Ruri, Nagi, and herself who will root for her no matter the dream. This fateful day would change everything for her. She's visibly happier, and even the food tastes better now. She'll spend the rest of the season joining the cast for various adventures, panning for Placer's gold, and searching for opals. In the same way a few verbal barbs derailed Seto from her mineralogy aspirations, Imari's words rectify Seto's course. Episode 7 captures how just a few kind words can redirect a life. For Seto Shoko, those little things make the difference between an unfulfilling, trash-filled life and a shimmering, iridescent dream. So I mentioned at the start that I was a graduate student. While I had plenty of colleagues who were giving big talks at conferences and publishing in premier journals, I think most of us students were quietly grinding away at our projects that would only amount to a thesis a handful of people will ever read. And that's what I loved about the portrayal of scientific work in Ruri Rocks. It's boring sometimes. You sit there for hours doing one thing over and over again because there isn't a shortcut. You have to make sure you eliminate as many variables as painstakingly as possible. You mess up because you're human and make a mistake counting the number of samples. There's so many instances where it feels like time has been wasted, but Ruri Rocks teaches a lesson I learned myself. When it comes to science, those mistakes and hours are not a waste. They're what pushes you to the finish line. While the show at first uses Ruri as the clueless newbie to act as the viewer stand-in, Nagi gradually fosters Ruri's scientific intuition until she becomes quite confident by the end of the season. In episode 2, Nagi teaches Ruri about how rain can displace more Placer's gold from upstream. When Ruri finds a hole due to a displaced boulder, she thinks nothing of it. But Nagi realizes that this hole is the perfect spot for gold to accumulate thanks to its higher density. Later in episode 5, Nagi and Imari teach Ruri about how density can be used to differentiate metal species like silver and copper. These may seem like simple fact of the day, one-off lessons, but Ruri is in the background absorbing all of this without ever explicitly noting it. And that growth becomes obvious the later in the season we go. In episode 9, Ruri is the one suggesting to Seto that they go panning following a severe typhoon. And it's Ruri whose observation skills lead her to the location of the opals in the cliffs above them. It's no coincidence that density becomes relevant again. Because the river width increased during the typhoon, these taller cliffs became accessible to the lower density opals which float to the bottom of the river more slowly. This is just one of innumerable examples of Ruri building upon the tips and tricks she learns from Nagi to make her own discoveries and observations. The little extra bit of history, whether it be from Archimedes thousands of years ago or Nagi just 1 week ago, can be the difference between a failed hunt and a pool of treasure. That said, even failure is just one more notch on Ruri's tool belt that will serve her well in the future. Episode 11 is another example that encapsulates all the learnings from Ruri's journey so far. Despite all her weekends gem hunting, she still doesn't see herself as a scientist. That is until she decides to investigate how her sapphire was originally formed. And so she sets out to answer that question. From scanning microscope slides to recalling the history of the local shrine, Ruri puts everything together to discover that the sapphire came from the seafloor mud. Yet, after finding more sapphires, Ruri still isn't satisfied, because she's the first one in the group to notice that there are 2 different shapes of sapphires. And so, she decides the job isn't done, and she runs off to make sure there isn't a single cliff or rock unturned. Ultimately, the climactic reward for Ruri isn't even getting to take home a new gemstone. As shown when she eagerly recounts to Nagi her findings, Ruri's takeaways were pride and knowledge. This is the same girl whose response to Nagi's excitement over the 2 pyrite shapes in episode 2 was, "That's barely anything." The greatest joy in Ruri Rocks comes from watching Ruri mature. Seeing this greedy gremlin go from petulantly asking Nagi for gems to happily spending the night looking through grams of sand really filled me with the kind of joy I only used to see as a teaching assistant. One of my biggest takeaways from grad school is that science is not always the glamorous job movies and TV make it out to be. Sure, there are some Dr. Stone senkus out there that are curing cancer and building rocket ships, but as a very average graduate student, I was always one of the Ruris in the scientific world, spending all my time alone sifting sand. But that work will slowly but surely become a firm foundation for future discoveries, one microscope slide at a time. To see those small actions come together and lead Ruri to developing intuition and wisdom is one of the best representations of science that I've ever seen in an anime.
この石はなぜ今ここにあるのだろう。どうしてこのような色や形をしているのだろう。偶然が積み重なった結果と答える人もいるかもしれない。だが、その偶然の裏には多くの必然もまた存在している。
In Ruri's ending monologue, she comments on the beauty of the pursuit of knowledge. Rocks form as a result of their environments, whether it be the movement of tectonic plates or last-minute decisions of train conductors. Every episode, Nagi and Imari pull out the whiteboard to lecture viewers on how rocks travel from location to location or how they develop specific patterns. The world is so complex and full of small variables that can make the difference between graphite and diamonds. But Ruri Rocks teaches viewers that people are also the products of these incremental influences. From chance meetings to microscopic grains, Ruri and Seto, as impressionable youths, were truly compressed, stretched, and had their paths diverted by a multitude of necessities. And that is a beautiful feat indeed. Ruri Rocks has been one of my favorite shows this year, not because of the final huge deposits of ore that they find at the end of each episode, but the things they picked up along the way. The scientific learnings, the friends, the little things.